What is up, everyone? My name is Joseph, and welcome to episode number 1 of Casually Competitive EDH, where our goal is to provide you with semi-competitive EDH content that is both fast-paced and entertaining. In today's game, our players have brought some of their favorite decks to the table. Going first today, we have Bill piloting Korvold Food Chain. The main win condition of this Jund Food Chain build is to play the enchantment Food Chain in combination with Squee the Immortal in order to generate infinite creature mana by constantly exiling Squee to Food Chain, and then finish off the table with something like Impact Tremors, doing 1 damage every time he does this. Bill's starting hand today is a Stomping Grounds, a Forest, a Chrome Mox, a Fyndhorn Elves, a Skirk Prospector, a Goblin Bombardment, and a Carpet of Flowers. Up next we have Nate playing Urza, Lord Artificer. This mono blue deck aims to generate infinite mana through combinations like Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal in order to untap all of his artifacts, or through a Training Grounds-like effect in combination with Pilipala in order to tap Pilipala for a blue mana using Urza's ability, and then untapping it with a reduced cost, generating 1 mana each loop. Once he has infinite mana, he has many ways, including Urza's own ability, in order to win the game. Nate's starting hand today is Seed of the Synod, Academy Ruins, a Mana Vault, a Welding Jar, a Trinket Mage, a Merchant's Dockhand, and a Sai, Master Thopterist. Going third, we have Adam, piloting Yisan, the Wanderer Bard. This mono-green deck aims to tutor up multiple creatures per turn through Yisan's ability by untapping him using effects such as Quirion Ranger or Wirewood Symbiote in order to tutor up one of his many creature-based combos. He finishes off the game with a large Craterhoof Behemoth or a Finale of Devastation, overwhelming the board. Adam mulliganed down to 6 today, and his starting hand had 2 Forests, a Llanowar Elves, a Vernal Bloom, a Karametra's Acolyte, and a Skyshroud Claim. And finally, going last today, we have Jordan, piloting my own version of Opus Thief. This deck tries to combine a wheel effect, like Wheel of Fortune or Windfall, with a payout effect, like Notion Thief or Smothering Tithe, in order to get large benefits from these wheels and keep their opponent's hands empty until they can finally get a Laboratory Maniac Demonic Consultation combo on the board, allowing him to exile his entire library and win with a Laboratory Maniac type effect. His starting hand was a Morphic Pool, an Exotic Orchard, a Drowned Catacomb, a Blood Crypt, a Mana Drain, a Soul Ring, and a Necropotence. Now with the introductions and the opening hands out of the way, let's get into the gameplay. Bill starts us off in this game playing a Stomping Grounds untapped, losing 2 life. He taps the Stomping Ground for a green to play Carpet of Flowers. It resolves, Bill sighs a breath of relief, and then he plays a Chrome Mox, imprinting Caustic Caterpillar. Lastly, he taps the Chrome Mox for a green to play a Fyndhorn Elves. Pretty happy with his turn 1, he passes the turn to Nate. Nate draws his card for turn, plays a Seed of the Synod as his land for turn, taps the seat for a Mana Vault, and then plays Welding Jar for 0. He then passes the turn to Adam. Adam draws his card for turn, plays a Forest, and then taps that Forest for a Llanowar Elves, and with nothing left to do, gives the turn to Jordan. Jordan draws his card for turn, plays a Morphic Pool untapped since he has 2 or more opponents, taps the Morphic Pool to play Soul Ring, taps the Soul Ring to play a Talisman of Dominance. He then gives the turn to Bill. Bill untap, draws, and at the beginning of his main phase realizes that there were no islands played from either of the blue players, so was not able to activate his Carpet of Flowers. Instead, he plays a Swamp as his land for turn, and taps Stomping Grounds for a Skirk Prospector. He then ships the turn over to Nate. Nate untaps, draws his card for turn, plays another non-island land, Academy Ruins, for turn. He then taps Seed of the Synod and Mana Vault to play Trinket Mage. Once it resolves, he tutors up Mox Opal. He then plays Mox Opal, and since he has Metalcraft, he taps it for a blue to put a Training Grounds on the stack. He holds his breath and passes priority with no blue mana open, and is relieved to find that no one was holding up a counterspell for Training Grounds. He then passes the turn to Adam. Adam untaps, draws his card for turn, and plays his second Forest. He then taps his 2 Forests and his Llanowar Elves to play Yisan, the Wanderer Bard. With nothing else, he passes the turn to Jordan. Jordan untaps, draws, plays an Exotic Orchard as land for turn, and then with 5 mana available to him on turn 2, passes the turn. Bill untaps, draws, and plays a Forest as his land for turn. He then proceeds to tap 3 lands, his Chrome Mox, and a Fyndhorn Elves to put Korvold on the stack, passing priority. Nate and Adam both pass priority, but when priority gets to Jordan, he taps 2 blue mana to cast Mana Drain, targeting Korvold. Bill has no responses to Mana Drain, and Mana Drain resolves, countering Korvold and getting Jordan 5 colorless mana on his next turn. With only 1 red mana available and still no mana from Carpet of Flowers, Bill passes the turn to Nate. On his upkeep, Nate takes 1 damage from Mana Vault since he decides to not untap it, and then proceeds to untap his permanents and draw his card for turn. For his land for turn, he plays a Ghost Quarter as his 3rd non-island land this game. He then taps 3 to play Sai, Master Thopterist. He then taps Mox Opal to play Merchant's Dockhand, getting a 1/1 Thopter on the cast trigger. With nothing left, he passes the turn to Adam. Adam untaps, draws, plays a Forest for turn, and decides that he needs a little bit of ramp right now to get back in this game, so he taps 4 mana for Karametra's Acolyte. He then passes the turn to Jordan. Jordan untaps, draws, gets 5 colorless mana from Mana Drain at the beginning of his first main phase. For those of you keeping track at home, that is 10 available mana he has on turn 3. The first thing he does on this turn is tap Talisman of Dominance for a blue, taking a damage, and Soul Ring for 2 colorless, and then uses 4 of the Mana Drain mana to cast a main phase Cyclonic Rift. Priority passes around the table, and everyone groans as it resolves, wiping everyone's explosive turn 1 and 2. He then proceeds to shock in a Blood Crypt, taking 2 more damage. He then taps the Blood Crypt for a black to cast a Dark Ritual. Uses the 3 floating black mana from Dark Ritual to cast a Necropotence. With no responses to Necropotence, Jordan pays 6 life to exile 6 cards with Necropotence, and then moves to his end step, taking those 6 cards into his hand and refilling his hand to 7. Bill, now with a handful of cards, untaps his lands and draws a card for turn. He plays Tree of Tales as his land for turn, then taps the tree for a Fintorn Elves. He then replays Chrome Mox, exiling Goblin Bombardment. He then taps Chrome Mox for a red to play Skirk Prospector. He then taps his forest to replay the world's best Carpet of Flowers. With nothing left to do and his board state mostly restored, he then passes the turn to Nate. Nate untaps and draws, and then taps Ghost Quarter for a colorless to play Mana Vault. He then replays Mox Opal. He then replays Welding Jar. He then taps his Seat of the Synod for a blue, and Mana Vault for 3 colorless, and Mox Opal for a blue to cast Urza, High Lord Artificer. In an attempt to keep his opponent's board states as barren as possible, Jordan taps an Exotic Orchard for a blue to cast a Brainstorm, digging for an answer. He draws 3, puts 2 back on top, and then passes priority. Urza then resolves, and on its ETB trigger, Nate gets a 5/5 construct to the battlefield. After that, using the 1 floating colorless from Mana Vault and the colorless from Academy Ruins, he taps Welding Jar using Urza's ability to generate a blue mana and replace Trinket Mage. Trinket Mage enters the battlefield and tutors up a Manifold Key to Nate's hand. With only 1 mana available left, he passes the turn to Adam. Adam untaps, draws, plays another Forest for turn. He then taps 4 for Skyshroud Claim, really just trying to get back in the game at this point. He gets 2 untapped forests to the battlefield. He taps 1 forest to replay his Land of War Elves, and then passes the turn to Jordan. Jordan untaps and skips his draw step due to Necropotence. He then plays a Sulphur Falls as another non-island land for turn. He taps Sulphur Falls for a red, and his Soul Ring for 2 colorless to cast a Dockside Extortionist, floating 1 colorless mana. Dockside Extortionist resolves, and when it enters the battlefield generates 7 treasures due to the number of artifacts and enchantments his opponents control. Jordan then pays 0 mana for a Mana Crypt. He then proceeds to use his 1 floating colorless mana, and taking a damage from Talisman of Dominance for a black mana, and sacrificing a treasure for a white, casts Timna the Weaver. Once one of his partner commanders resolves, he then taps Morphic Pool for a blue, and Mana Crypt for 2 colorless to cast Windfall. He holds priority on Windfall, and the entire table groans, knowing what's coming. Jordan taps Blood Crypt for a black, Exotic Orchard for a blue, and sacrifices 2 treasures to flash out Notion Thief. He then passes priority. In response, Bill exiles Simian Spirit Guide from his hand to generate 1 red, and then passes priority to Nate. Nate, with 1 blue mana available, passes priority. With only 1 green mana available and a limited number of cards in his hand, Adam also passes priority. Everyone then discards their entire hand, and Jordan draws 24 cards, using Notion Thief's replacement effect to draw all the cards that everyone else would have drawn. Some notable discards from this windfall are the Training Grounds that Nate didn't replay, and the Yisan that was in Adam's hand. He decides to put this into the command zone. Jordan then plays Lotus Petal for 0 mana. He then plays a Chrome Mox, imprinting Dovin's Veto. He then sacrifices 3 treasures, one of them being red, and puts a Wheel of Fortune on the stack. With no one else having any cards in hand, this resolves without an issue, and then Jordan discards his hand and draws 28 cards this time from Wheel of Fortune. Still not finding what he's looking for, Jordan sacrifices Lotus Petal for a red to play Burning Inquiry. He then draws 12 cards and discards 3 of his 39 cards at random. Now, with not enough mana to do what he wanted to do, he pays 10 life into Necropotence to exile 10 cards, and then passes the turn. Knowing that all Jordan needs is a little bit more mana to finish this game, Bill untaps and draws, hoping the top card is good enough to save this game. Bill then taps all of his lands, artifacts, and creatures, and sacrifices Skirk Prospector to himself for a red mana, generates 7 mana, and recasts Korvold for the second time this game. This time it resolves, and as it enters the battlefield, he sacrifices Carpet of Flowers to Korvold's ETB trigger. He then puts a +1/+1 counter on Korvold, and then due to Notion Thief being on the battlefield, Jordan draws a card. With no mana available and only 1 card in hand, he passes the turn to Nate. Nate untaps, taking 1 damage from Mana Vault since he decides to not untap Mana Vault, and then draws for turn. He then plays what he drew, a Tormod's Crypt. He then sacrifices Tormod's Crypt to exile Jordan's graveyard, and with no cards in hand left, passes the turn to Adam. Adam untaps, draws, and then taps 4 forests to play Oracle of Moldiah, revealing the top card of his library when it enters, which is an Elvish Mystic. He then taps his remaining forests and a Land of War Elves to replay Yisan. Unfortunately, we did not catch in the heat of the moment that Yisan was already played this game and should have cost 5 mana. Fortunately, it was not super relevant to this game, however that was a misplay. Speaking of misplays, as Adam passes the turn, on his end step, Jordan sacrifices a treasure for a black mana to cast Vampiric Tutor, losing 2 life, and tutoring a card to the top of his library. He then untaps, loses his Mana Crypt trigger, taking 3 damage, and then remembers he has no draw step due to Necropotence, and the card he tutored for stays on the top of his library. However, Jordan does not let this slight oversight stop him. He taps Morphic Pool for a blue and Mana Crypt for 2 colorless to put a Laboratory Maniac on the stack. In response to this cast, Nate pays 5 mana into Urza's ability to shuffle his library and exile the top card. The card he exiled was Swan Song, so while it was a counter, it does not stop Laboratory Maniac. Laboratory Maniac then resolves. Really needing to draw very specific cards from the few cards that are left in his library, he taps Sulphur Falls for a red to put a Winds of Change on the stack. In response, Nate casts his Swan Song for free, targeting Winds of Change. Fortunately, since he saw 50 cards of his deck last turn, Jordan has the answer he needs. He pays 2 life and casts Mental Misstep, targeting Swan Song. The stack then resolves, and Jordan shuffles his 4 cards into his deck and then draws 5, since Bill did have 1 card left in hand, allowing Jordan to dig 1 deeper. Jordan then taps Talisman of Dominance for a blue, taking 1 damage, and Soul Ring for 2 colorless, and an Exotic Orchard for another blue, to cast Chain of Vapor, using 1 of the blue, targeting Dockside Extortionist. Jordan then copies the spell 4 times, sacrificing 4 lands in order to bounce Talisman of Dominance, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, and finally, Korvold. In a last-ditch effort to stop whatever was happening, Bill sacrifices a land to bounce Laboratory Maniac to Jordan's hand. The stack resolves, the final permanents return to their owner's hand, and Jordan proceeds to replay his Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, and Talisman of Dominance using the 3 floating mana. In order to ensure he'll have enough mana for whatever else happens, Jordan taps Blood Crypt for a red, Mana Crypt for 2 colorless, and replays Dockside Extortionist, floating 1 colorless mana. No one else has any cards in hand, and as it enters the battlefield, it generates 6 more treasures for Jordan. Jordan then sacrifices 1 treasure for a blue, taps Soul Ring for 2 colorless, and replays Laboratory Maniac with 1 colorless mana still floating. He then pays 2 life to cast Gitaxian Probe, targeting himself so he can look at his own hand, and then draws another card. He then swings Tymna at Bill, gaining 2 life, and then pays 1 life into Tymna's trigger to dig 1 more card deep. Finally, finding what he needs, plays a Cephalid Colosseum as his land for turn. He then remembers that he could Necropotence at any time, exiling his library, so he didn't need instant speed, so he does that now. He pays 5 life into Necropotence, exiling the rest of his library, cracks Cephaloid Colosseum using 1 blue mana from a treasure, draws 3 cards, and when he draws with an empty library, wins the game with Laboratory Maniac. After almost 2 hours of gameplay, Jordan was finally able to grind out that win. Looking back at it, the turning point of this game was that mana drain onto Korvold. The Cyclonic Rift slowing everyone down by an entire turn cycle really allowed Jordan to just catapult onto the next level and really do what he needed to do. And if we're going to look at the most valuable card, let's take a look at the least valuable card this game, which has got to go to Carpet of Flowers. I have never seen a Carpet of Flowers played against a mono blue deck and another strong control deck ever go without seeing an island, especially 5 turns into the game. Really upsetting for Bill, but you gotta hand it to Nate and Jordan for being able to play around this Carpet of Flowers and deny Bill that mana. But with the game over and the closing thoughts concluded, that is all we have for this video. All of us here at Casually Competitive MTG really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy the content and you're looking forward to more content from us, be sure to subscribe and hit that like button to let us know that you did like it. If you did make it to this part of the video and you're still watching, I got a little sneak peek for you. The next video we have planned for you is an exciting pod. The pod contains Elsha of the Infinite from the recent Commander precons, Brago King Eternal stacks, which is always a fantastic and fun deck to play against, the Gitrog monster focusing on a dredge combo, and Najeela focusing on just destroying everyone's life points. So we hope you guys are looking forward to that video, and we'd love to see you there. But that is all we have for this video. So like I said, my name is Joseph, this is Casually Competitive MTG, and we will see you next time.